me. We reach back across the sea to fulfill our destiny. We're the flag family, trying to be the best that we can be. We reach back across the sea to fulfill our destiny.
Zawadi, which is the Swahili word for gifts, is one of the cornerstone ways you can celebrate Kwanzaa. But, and this is a but in all caps, Zawadi does not and should not mimic the gifting practices in mainstream American holidays that are mostly driven by consumer capitalism and contribute to the culture of greed, destruction, and disregard for our environment.
Contrarily, gifting during Kwanzaa is meant to serve as a way of inspiring and nurturing the creativity needed to rebuild ourselves as a people, provide fun and meaningful ways for children to engage the holiday, and be symbolic of the continuous labor and love of parents and the commitment of children.
We're going to walk you through some of our family's journey making Zawadi for family members and ourselves. As you will see, the things we have made are wide-ranging and have changed from year to year depending on the time and resources we could devote to the gifts. And in one instance, the gift was gradually made across the span of a year. I say this to say that when it comes to making and giving Zawadi during Kwanzaa, the most important point is that it aids you in your practice and application of the 7 core principles with both family and community. And speaking of community, I want to shout out Brother Sean and the 100% College Prep Institute in the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood of San Francisco, one of the only remaining historically black communities in San Francisco. For years, Brother Sean, Sister Diane Gray, and a host of others have organized an annual How to Kwanzaa event for the community. And in 2016, our family was able to display one of our earliest arts and crafts Kwanzaa pieces to help people learn about the Kwanzaa principles.
Right. Much appreciated, Brother Sean. And if you squint and tilt your head a little, you can see the piece hanging on the wall in the back. Pictured here is Brother Sean working with one of the youth from 100% College Prep. And behind him on the wall is our family's Kwanzaa principles piece. At the time, our first 2 sons were 3 and 5 years old and helped us cut out the symbols from construction paper, hand-painted the words, and used a sponge to stamp decorative red, black, and green marks all over the poster. And of course, the stamping part was the most exciting for them. So in continuation of this practice, over the past several years, we have made smaller Zawadi for our parents or our children's grandparents, and a couple of bigger pieces for our own household as well. I'll start with the folded pop-up boxes and thank you notes our kids made for their grandparents. With this one, I was able to find a cool little tutorial on the internet on how to make the general structure of the boxes. We used that as a template, but then made a few tweaks to incorporate more African symbols. The boxes and notes are made out of cardstock, construction paper, and printer paper, and are colored with markers and crayons. When we made these, our sons were 4 and 6 years old. So while we were intentional about introducing them to the principles of Kwanzaa and stuff like the traditional decorations, we didn't try to go super heavy with the literal meaning behind every aspect of the holiday. We instead used Kwanzaa as a backdrop for them to consciously reflect on the love, support, and joys that they receive from their family, and specifically work with them on writing out personalized notes of appreciation to their grandparents. This gave them an opportunity to think deeply about their place in community, do a fun artistic project that took significant effort to complete, as well as an opportunity to take pride and joy in giving back to their community.
When I think back on the pop-up box Zawadi we made, I remember being proud about knowing that what I was giving to my grandparents was something I actually created. And even today when I see them, I feel a strong sense of ownership over the project, which makes me feel proud. The pop-up boxes were exciting to make because of all the creative and moving parts that require drawing, cutting, and coloring. And doing that to create a gift while being a little kid made me feel skillful, efficient, and capable of not only creating something nice then, but also in my ability to create things in general. I also really like the pop-up boxes because they gave me a way to be able to share my thoughts with my grandparents. I like the way that the notes my brother and I wrote were able to capture our feelings at the time. And even today, because they exist, they provide some reflection on my life and allow me to remember and appreciate my grandparents.
This next project is a three-dimensional wood-carved piece that I made on a CNC machine. I won't get super technical about the process, but basically I used a 3D modeling program called Fusion 360 to make a digital 3D model of a hand-drawn sketch I did. The program allows you to upload it to a robotic drill called a CNC machine that systematically carves out the model. I studied product design and development in college, and one of the perks was having access to a pretty dope workshop to do projects. I wasn't too interested in actually becoming an industrial designer, so instead I took the opportunity to apply the skills I was learning to create an artistic piece that reflected the values and ideas of my family while also affirming me and my wife's journey. We were a young black couple that got married at 21 and had 3 of our 5 children while working our way through undergraduate and graduate school. This piece is actually carved out of a tabletop that I found sitting on a curb and presently hangs on a wall in our home.
Another gift that our children created for each of their grandparents' homes were kanaras. In 2018, with our children being a little older, 5 and 7 to be exact, I had the idea for them to build kanaras for their grandparents with the hope that their creations would aid in their development of a more thorough understanding of Kwanzaa, while also serving a practical element and allowing them to have the resources to begin implementing the more traditional practices of Kwanzaa with their extended family. So after piecing together the materials that consisted of repurposed wood, originally used as slats in the bed frame, craft supplies and hardware such as scissors, markers, paint pens, glue, screws, and a power drill that we had at home, an additional power tool for cutting the wood that was actually borrowed, and a few online purchases of candles, glass holders, and African fabric, I did one of the things that I love to do, which is put my family to work.
And boy, don't I know it. So, after we collectively settled on a design that was simple enough for our boys to carry out, but also nice enough to stand as the centerpieces for their grandparents' Kwanzaa sets, we went on to introduce them to a concept of hard work and labor in the context of building for your family and community. Through this Zawadi project, the boys were able to learn some new skills while applying their love and creativity to a gift for their grandparents.
I remember us spending a lot of time and energy creating Zawadi for our grandparents that year. But I would say that it was definitely worth it because those kanaras have helped us to continue family tradition. Initially, I felt intimidated by the project and didn't think I could do it. But once I understood the plan, I realized it was pretty simple. One of the things I really liked was using the African cloth, because I knew it was something that actually came from our homeland, Africa. And I also really enjoyed the freedom of creating patterns to decorate the kanaras. Ultimately, the Kanara Zawadi project made me feel more connected to my African ancestry.
This final piece we would like to share with you is the most recent Zawadi we created for ourselves. It is also the project that took us almost a year to complete. Between work, homeschooling, typical day-to-day needs, and having our 5th beautiful baby, this project has definitely been a labor of love. We call it our Black Power Tree. The driving idea behind this project was to create a central piece in our home that not only reinforced the concepts of Kwanzaa, but also served as a grand visual display of the holiday. This helps to counter familial and societal influences that can entice children with the bright lights and shiny objects, i.e. the Christmas tree. For the creative process, me and my wife talked with our children about what we wanted to do and had everybody draw a version of their design. We then incorporated key elements from everybody's design to come up with the final design. Similar to other projects, it was important to include everybody in every step of the way. And we even got my wife to break away from some of her motherly duties to get down and dirty with some power tools. We started out with a paper template to mark off the initial cuts. Remember, measure twice, cut once. Then I used a handheld router that I bought secondhand to do some of the detail work in the roots and the lettering. Lastly, after everything was cut, we had a family paint day. It was important to incorporate some room for error so that the children's excitement or brief lapse in judgment don't cause any major setbacks. And once everything dried, my
In
sons and
closing,
I
we hope
assembled
this
it
serves as
and found a
inspiration
great
and
place for
encourages
it
you
in
to
our
start
home.
thinking of how you want to create Zawadi during the next holiday season. No matter how big or small, creating opportunities for creativity and giving is an essential aspect of rebuilding our community. And look out for our upcoming video for the Zawadi we are making for all of our cousins during Kwanzaa 2021. Thank you.